Well, here we are officially. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. This is the second conversation of a series that's being generously sponsored by the Barbara Friedman Family Leadership Family Foundation, I should say. And this is a leadership series, a number of conversations that NAF is hosting. I'm Bill Taylor, Vice President of Outreach and Partnership Development, speaking to you from Raleigh, North Carolina. And I'm really excited for today's conversation. We're going to be talking about how we expand on public-private partnerships. And so I'll be your Zoom concierge for the conversation. And we're really excited for the just really impressive assembly of leaders that we've got on this call from Washington, D.C. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our host and facilitator extraordinaire, NAF CEO, JD Hoy. So JD, take it away.
Okay, so welcome everybody. As Bill said, I'm JD Hoy. I'm the CEO of NAF. And what's exciting about this conversation for me is that, you know, leadership matters. We know leadership matters, but more importantly in this conversation is the partnership of leaders who come together around a common vision around how a partnership can actually transform systems that have historically been unwilling to adjust, even with lots of data saying that it should be different, we should do it differently, we should work well together, but at the end of the day, it stays the same. So I'm excited because in DC, what I believe exists is a set of leaders who have committed to this notion of fundamental system reform to both improve outcomes for young people and at the same time improve the opportunities in their communities. And it's taken great leaders with great vision, but I think the quote that I most use when people say, what's the magic sauce that happens for communities that let these transformational moments happen, was a quote from a woman that I used to work with years ago in Philadelphia, who said that the magic is bringing leaders together who can suppress ego, who can actually see beyond their own perspective and into the greater good, and to work together for a common good, even if at times it doesn't put them at the top of the pile, but it is for the common good that allows it to happen. So I'm thrilled to have all of you here. I've been with NAF for a long time. NAF represents at its core public-private partnerships as the tool by which success can happen for all kids and move them into life-sustaining wages and grow communities at the same time. So let's just do a round robin, let everybody on the call know who's here. I can just say you're all masterful leaders in your own right. So just give us an insight to yourselves. Let's start with Emily.
No, let's just start with Emily. Well, I'm Emily. I had the very good fortune in the late 90s when we were about to build a convention center to find NAF, or NAF found me. And I opened on behalf of my industry, which is the hotel industry of Washington. We opened a wall-to-wall NAF high school, which for 15 years knocked it out of the park in terms of getting the least likely students into college, into careers, and getting full support from an industry in their lives. And then I was lucky again when a friend became mayor to morph over to the Office of State Superintendent, where I met and engaged with my friends Antoinette and Erin. And we started the work that they're doing now so ably. And then I went to DCPS to really start pushing more NAF academies, frankly, into the schools and work with a larger portion of the business community. And of course, Thomas Penny's been at my side from the very beginning of the charter school, and he's still at my side on many projects.
How about you, Antoinette?
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with everyone. My name is Antoinette Mitchell. I currently serve as the Assistant Superintendent for Post-Secondary and Career Education in the State Education Agency here in Washington, D.C. As Emily indicated, we worked together many years ago. Can you believe it, Emily? It's been 10 years.
Oh, no, I don't want to hear that.
But you should share the magic of breaking bread together.
Absolutely. We were together at the beginning of the, we rewrote a CTE plan, and Emily, through her connection, was able to secure some funds, and we made the decision to go with NAF to implement best policies in CTE that we knew of and that we learned about through our joint work on that state plan. And I've stayed at OSSI and worked to foster and support the NAF academies all the way through, with lots of partnership from lots of folks on the call, including Erin and Thomas. And we're looking forward to sending kids straight to you, Ron, at UDC.
Awesome. Ron?
So I'm Ronald Mason, president of the University of the District of Columbia, which is the only public institution of higher learning in the nation's capital. We do all levels of the workforce, from certification through the associate's degree up through the bachelor's. And we're redesigning the university now so that every door leads to the next door, with intermediate credentials in between degrees and on and off ramps, because our vision is that every one of our students will reach their highest level of human potential, but we understand that potential changes over time and life sometimes gets in the way of your path. And so we're designing a university for where the students are, in hopes that we can help enlightened employers solve their talent deficit issues.
Great. So happy you're with us. Erin, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erin Bebo, Deputy Chief of College and Career Programs at DC Public Schools. Before that, had the honor to work with Emily and Antoinette at OSSI. At DCPS, we have taken NAF and run with it. When I arrived, we had 7 NAF academies, and this school year, which starts a week from today, we're gonna have 25. And and we've worked really hard to get there, and it's been a real team effort, and I think a testament to the work that everybody on this call has done together. But it's not just sort of the partnerships that's made it happen, it's the data that has made it happen. And we find at DCPS, once students who come in equal to their peers in like all key sort of metrics, start to outpace those peers within 1 year of being in an NAF Academy in all of the metrics that really matter. They show up to school, their attendance goes up, their GPAs go up, they're more likely to apply to college and go to college. They're certainly more likely to have at least one career-ready internship, you know, in a rigorous area associated with their career interest. And so when you can say that, you know, you talked about secret in the sauce, JD, well, at DCPS, we believe that NAF is one of the secrets in our sauce. And so that's why it's been growing so exponentially here in the past 6 years. And really very grateful to everybody here on the call and to you and to those at NAF for helping us to make that happen.
Awesome, Erin. Thomas, speaking of somebody who has a perspective of secret sauce in terms of the role employers play.
My name is Thomas Penny. I'm the president of Donahoe Hospitality Services. And as Emily referenced, we met 24 years ago when I was 21 years old. and here it is all these years later. In addition to Emily, we've been able to do some great work in terms of Antoinette, myself, and Erin. And you know, it's exciting to see what Ron Mason has done with the college. And really, our level of engagement is really around making certain that not only can Terrell graduate from high school and go on to college, but we want him to graduate from college and have the experience and the exposure such that he can transition and hopefully have the relationships to transition into a level of leadership or ownership at some point in the future. And so this is really the realization that none of us have a whole lot of time, but this work is our collective legacy. And to the extent that we work together, we can make certain that Terrell is able to invade the impossible. And so I'm excited about the opportunity to share more. We got some special people in DC, and the special sauce is the special people, inclusive of government folks, our students, obviously, and private partners that understand the importance of this work.
Awesome. You know, Thomas, one of the things that you brought to this conversation that I want to give a shout out, and I'm hoping this leadership series helps with it, is you came to our board of directors with the idea of beginning to think about sister cities, about how what you're living and experiencing in DC through that kind of powerful partnership could actually reach across state lines and bring up other cities to not have to, you know, make the same mistakes. They'll make their own, but they don't have to make the same ones. And so you've brought that legacy of thinking beyond the walls of the confines of a place to what you can do to actually replicate while honoring unique local conditions. And I think St. Louis has really benefited from that reach, Thomas, so kudos to you.
Well, JD, I just want to say that I think St. Louis came on board right around the time when the situation in Ferguson was happening.
Right.
And obviously that compelled us to kind of come together to see how we can support the work that they were doing. And I think they've done a great job of launching their academies. And I think we've been able to learn from each other and strengthen the work that's happening in St. Louis and DC as a result of maintaining communication and sharing best practices.
But you had to have a willingness. And I guess the shout out to you is that, you know, so often I think people only look in their own backyard and they don't imagine, even with a Jennings, that there's a powerful connection that can happen by the exchange of knowledge, information, and talent across those lines. And I think it's been remarkable. And I think it's in part that suppression of ego and local connection that lets people reach across aisles and make a difference. So I'm still not letting you push it away. I'm still giving you credit for that. Terrell, you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Terrell Brooks. I'm from Washington, D.C. I got the amazing opportunity to be a part of the KPMG internship. And currently I'm in West Virginia at Bosch University studying computer engineering.
Congratulations. Although Ron wants to know why you went there and didn't go to him. Right, Ron?
Yes,
all right.
Oh, he
All right,
says
so go ahead. Go ahead, Emily, what?
that to everybody.
Yeah,
Everybody-
that's true, right?
Well, you know. I
So
understand.
the first question out of the gate, and I know there's always this delay thing that we have to kind of manage. So, you know, the little yellow box in your screen should help you navigate who's talking. But the first question is, you know, especially with COVID, we have lots of communities who are really thinking strategically about the economy, their future workforce, and how education fits in that equation. And they're trying to figure out how to line up their education reform ambitions with their economic development, talent development strategies for their communities. So if you could give some shout outs to some things that you think work by how to align all of those different strands so that we're all pulling in the same direction. Anybody want to jump in?
Well, I'll start by saying that one of the most important aspects of the NAF Academy's success in DC is funding, right? And so we have worked really hard to maintain consistent funding as seed money to encourage LEAs like DCPS and some of the charters to jump on board and go through the NAF process. Once we understood like key components of and best practices in CTE, we really needed to find what is the strategy. And so once we decided that NAF was the strategy, then the funding was really critical to enable LEAs to start NAF academies and then to keep them going So that was really important. And then it continues through the funding that is provided for the internships through the Department of Employment Services and their Summer Youth Employment Program. So together, I think consistent funding is a very strong part of the puzzle that enables us to move forward with the academies.
So Erin, clearly on the funding equation, you've leveraged some big ideas.
Was that to me?
Yes.
Sorry. I talked over you. I'm sorry about that. I was just going to amplify what Antoinette said. For us, and I'm saying this just thinking about the audience, whom I'm assuming is a lot of other districts who, you know, are either offering NAF or are thinking about offering NAF. For us, the single most important piece of making the NAF work, of achieving the outcomes that I said we do, is because every NAF Academy has at least one full-time leader. And I remember very, very clearly, oh my God, 8 years ago. Terrell, I'm so old. How did I get so old, Terrell? This is horrible. But sitting down with, you know, Emily and Antoinette and the team at NAF, and we said, okay, you know, we've gotten this money to do this, you know, don't tell us what the traditional NAF model is. Help us build the platinum model. And I remember having conversations with a, you know, man named Steve Casa. And Steve said, well, you know, if you really wanted to go for it, you could have a full-time academy leader. And we said, well, Steve, say more, you know, and then as a result, we designed these positions and they are still there. And for the most part, Aussie and Antoinette's team will fund them for 2 years. As long as LEAs like myself will commit to absorbing them into the school budgets after. At DCPS, we have a 100% track record, and you can't do this well without that. For school districts that do it and achieve what they do, I tip my hat to you. I do not know how you do it. For us, our teachers would say very compellingly, and these were incredibly hardworking teachers, I just can't pull off all of these non-instructional things that are so essential to the NAF model. The work-based learning, they had the ideas, you know, the college partnerships, they had the idea, they just didn't have the bandwidth to execute. And one of my most favorite moments was a couple of years ago hearing one of our, Wesley McCammon, who's this amazing health sciences teacher, about a half a year, maybe almost a full year into the, you know, his first academy, his first year, he said, my NAF Academy director makes my dreams come true. Everything that I've wanted to do since I started working here that goes beyond the sort of classroom experience that he can control, he's like, she does it. And so I think that is really hard to pull off, right? You know, there's no magical money, especially now. But one of the reasons that we were we were able to be so nimble during COVID is because we had those directors who could work with us to move all of our internships to virtual internships, who could pivot to have guest speakers come and do things virtually, to do college tours virtually, to support their teachers as they figured out how to do synchronous and asynchronous instruction well. And so for me, for districts who are thinking about how to take their existing NAFs to the next level, or if this is a space where you're starting, I know it's really hard, but I cannot recommend it enough as like an essential component of the success.
So Erin, similar comments were made. Ron, at the convening at the Ludwig's home around the partnership with KIPP, for example, there was a woman similar to Erin's point there who kind of saw, pardon?
Tavera.
Yeah. Gave a great testimonial to your point, Erin, in terms of needing a person. You can have the design, you can have the heart and the will, but without somebody who really kind of puts jet fuel on it and actually takes it to the next level. It sounded to me like in her worldview, it was the bridge to post-secondary. It made post-secondary possible. Ron, any thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I should be doing some positive affirmation for what NAF does, but we don't work directly with NAF, as you know. But at the public institution where we are, we have to worry about all of the students. And so, you know, there's NAF, which has sort of a school within a school model. And then there's other support organizations, but we're more about mass production. And so, you know, we've been having to figure out not only how to help the students that are inclined for whatever reason to go to college and have a real desire to cross that bridge to be successful, but we also have to motivate the other students to help reach their highest levels of human potential. And so, you know, part of what we're looking at, and I remember at that presentation at the end, I don't know if it was you or the Aspen guy, he was talking about the challenge of actually placing students in internships. And he said something about we really have some work to do on a cultural change with the employer group in order for them to be able to accept more of our interns, right? And it's really that those cultural barriers that we've started to take into consideration as we redesign the university in a way that allows more and more students to be successful. And, you know, if that's something that we could work together with NAF on in terms of the higher education level, because it's all the same students, you know, and so when they come out of DCPS, most of them come directly to us and they're still looking for the same opportunities, the same internships, and still trying to reach their highest levels of potential.
Really good point. We just have another student who just joined us but didn't get a chance to introduce herself. Do you want to take a shot? Say hello. Tell us who you are, where you're from.
Hello, my name is Demaya Brown, and I'm a junior at Eastern.
Welcome. Really glad you're with us. To your point, Ron, I think, you know, and I want Thomas to talk a little bit about this in terms of the employer piece. You know, I get a lot of people telling me, yeah, we do internships, but we do it for colleges, not high schools. And to Erin's point, and Emily's point, and Antoinette's point about the data, about talent, and how the design pushes to better performance, which makes for you a better college student. It's part of the work-based learning experience that does that. And so you can't have employers walking around saying, oh, we don't do high school kids, or you lose that data impact that's so important that Erin was talking about. And I think the boards and the companies, Terrell, your experience with KPMG, Verizon, Thomas, your experience, they're the first ones to tell me once they experience a NAF student in their workplace, they want more. There's this mental block that you're not ready to be a valued employee until you're out of high school, which is just a misnomer, but we got to do something about it. Thomas?
So I would just add that obviously we got two dynamite students in front of us. Yeah. You know, Terrell is showing me up, obviously, but we got two dynamite students in front of us. And from my perspective, an important part of this is making sure Terrell and Demaya can see folks that look like them in business, who has a genuine interest in sharing high-level exposure opportunities with them, such that when they get to Ron, they have a high level of confidence in that they've had some exposure and some experience, such that at the college level, when they transition into an internship, they're able to perform at a high level, and the employer does not have to make too many alterations to receive them because they've had this experience at the high school level. And so I think it's the structure of NAF. I think it's being very intentional about having a diverse body of business representatives on the industry advisory boards. And it's also about continuing to challenge ourselves to, again, create high level exposure opportunities for the young people, we make it a point on the hotels in the Academy of Hospitality and Tourism in DC to have these hotel ownership series where we bring the students together to show them how to evaluate a hotel and how to go about soliciting equity for a hotel transaction and how to evaluate returns. And we've seen our young people perform at a high level. And so I think that, again, it's the structure coupled with individuals who look like the students really pouring into them that make the difference.
Really good point. And Ms. Brown, you might want to tell us, I understand you've had 2 internships. Is that right, in health sciences?
Yes, I was with Georgetown and Children's National this summer.
What'd you think?
So initially I was kind of nervous about virtual because it was my first internship and also my first virtual internship. So I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't know if it was going to be like educational for me or like as good as it would be in person. But when we started, we automatically got to work, and I got to meet a lot of people the first week. The week after that, I've been meeting so many people. I've been able to introduce myself to a lot of important people and positions, period. And it was really a great experience.
Terrific. I think that, you know, we have a lot to learn. We've moved so much virtual in terms of internships, future ready labs, multiple experiences with companies. The jury's still out in terms of equity and whether or not it's as good as. I don't think we know yet. I'm just happy that it's a way to keep it alive and keep it moving against the data points that Erin mentioned earlier. I want Emily to weigh in a little bit on the strategic partners that were brought together in DC, many of which are here on the call. How we identify the right people that are change agents, that are able to actually leverage a new way of thinking around partnership. Any tips? I mean, if I'm a local community and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking to myself, this is great, but we're not in DC. How did you come about kind of figuring out who the right people to bring together were?
Well, you know, I had a corporate background for almost 40 years before I got involved with NAF. So I was lucky enough to be able to say, I know a strategic person, like take Thomas in the hotel industry. I know a strategic person in the industries, the information technology industry. I know somebody in all these industries we can pull and get other members in their industry excited. So I used 1 to get 10, and that got me up and running right away and hard, which was great. And then I went, and I would like to add, it's happening even today in more detail. I went to the biggest, most prestigious business group in town and did a PowerPoint before 70 members who were interested in career and technical education and DC schools. And when I walked out of there, and remember, I walked out of there with 120 people saying, I'll take interns, I'll be engaged, we'll do exposure programs. Because I'm a huge believer, the biggest thing we can do for these children, all the things everyone said is important, but is confidence. So dual enrollment gives them confidence in a college environment, which is why I love how we send a lot of kids to UDC and into the associate programs and the certificate programs, but we also send them to all the schools. Every university in the district participates in dual enrollment. And then the industry relationship to me is huge on the confidence factor. The technical factor is important, but the confidence factor to me is huge. So exposure, internships, and employment. Now what's happening in DC now, and Thomas knows this, because this is one of our little projects we're part of, is going to the next level by, like I would say, a figure of 5. So saying, yes, business community, you're doing a really exemplary job compared to many cities. You've had a lot of impact these last 10 years. But you know what? We have some clear issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and we need to bump this game up. So we're about to do a presentation. I'm working with City Bridge in the fall with, again, the Federal City Council to say we want 100 members of the Federal City Council to make a 10-year commitment to do, here's a menu, pick the things you want to do. You know, loaning young executives, doing exposure programs, doing internships. And of course this feeds NAF.
So two things pop for me, Emily. If I'm a local community that's really hungry to do this, the job you had before you came into the educational space, are there people like that in lots of these communities? And what is that? Is it what's that title? What's that place? Who do they reach to try to get another Emily in their city?
Well, I want to make it sound like I'm so special and unique, but I had 40 years working in this area. That was 40 years, a lot of words and a lot of connections. But you know what I did a project with, I liked looking at the Naples model, where the Naples School District talked to the Naples Chamber of Commerce and said, we desperately, and they said, you know what, we're in. And they actually donated an employee, a very sharp, well-connected, bright employee, to manage all the career and technical relationships in the Naples School District. And they're very happy, and they admit they couldn't begin to do what because they don't have the time. They have nobody on staff that knows how to talk to businesses. They don't know who the businesses are. This woman's there every single day. What do you need? What do you need? Who do you need? And she sets up everything they want. And I think that's doable to me in any city or county in this country. They all have a chamber, a board of trade, some organization. If you can get them interested, Indianapolis is another. If you can get them interested and committed, if you can't find somebody inside, I was unusual inside person, then they should be able to donate a person who is the bridge between the school district and the business community.
So one of the innovations that we tried to push on the internship, because we agreed with you from the get-go that work-based learning is a game changer for young people. It's also a great way for employers to get a glimpse of the talent that's available. It's a great way for universities and colleges to also see the benefit of a student that they may want to reach to and bring in. So we tried to figure out how to do these larger number through Future Ready Labs, where you could bring 20 or 30 students together around a project of value and still get some of the benefit for the students, the payment for the students, the expectation building, the confidence building you talk about. And I know, Terrell, you did a couple of those Future Ready Lab experiences, including a virtual setting. What was your gut reaction? Did you feel like it was adequate? Was it disappointing? Or was it as stimulating as you would imagine another regular paid one-on-one internship would be?
Coming into the internship, I really didn't know what to expect. But then I didn't really look at it as a job. I just thought it would be like an opportunity for me to like grow and just learn things. And then I just like the creativity, because I thought it would only be like DC students. But we had students from Dallas, St. Louis, and then my supervisor was from New York. And so like just being able to communicate with people across the country was just amazing to me.
It's very
That's
cool.
terrific. That's terrific. So
yeah, if I could jump in really quickly. I'd like to echo Terrell's statements about the Future Ready Labs. We were so happy to participate in those labs this summer. We had a few different internship options going on, and the Future Ready Labs with Verizon and KPMG, I think. Incredible opportunities for our students to get the exposure that we've been talking about. And the apps that were created as a result of that were just fantastic. The innovation and creativity of our kids was really fantastic to see. And so, you know, creating that opportunity, the context for them to just expand and show what they can do was amazing. So the Future Ready Labs, I think, is a fantastic way for us to think about expanding opportunities for our kids. And while I have the mic a little bit, wanted to respond to something that Ron Mason indicated earlier about the number of students that we're able to support with the career academies. We began with a few career academies, and as Erin has indicated, we've expanded to 25, 26 academies in a relatively short time. We've got about 2,600 students in academies. Some schools are wall-to-wall academies. And as we gear up with career and technical education, we are merging so that all of the students that take career and technical education classes benefit from the experiences that we have taken from our NAF interactions. So we're trying really hard to spread all of the fantastic experiences that students have as a result of NAF with as many students as possible.
That's excellent. I mean, you know, it's been years, right? So there was the pathway of college going, there was the CTE pathway, and then some would argue there was general education, which prepared you for neither college or work. So, you know, that was the joke of the, you know, 1990s. So I'm so thrilled that there's a district that's willing to see this as a blended strategy for all students and show that the work-based learning CTE side of the conversation is not necessarily a different pathway, but an amplifying pathway that brings great relevance and a high degree of enthusiasm on the confidence building that we talked about is so important for students to be successful in college and in life. You know, the thing that I want to jump to is what you guys have pulled off requires a high degree of not only trust, but communication, staying connected to each other on all of the exciting activities that you're all engaged in. How are you doing that?
I'll start and then Erin can jump in. As you know, JD, one of the important aspects of NAF are the boards. And we have executive advisory boards, we've got industry advisory boards that are constantly working and constantly coming together to think about what we can do. Thomas, as a matter of fact, was leader of the executive advisory board for a very long time. I think though that behind the scenes of even boards, you have staff, right? And so without our staff working together, OSSI's got dedicated staff that work on NAF academies, DCPS has the same, and those individuals really do knit together all of the pieces that enable us to move forward as a district, as one, you know, Washington, DC NAF network. The concept of a network was relatively new when we started, and it has been pulled together. You know, DC CAN, the Career Academy Network, is what, through the advisory boards, is what enables us to stay in constant communication through the board meetings, through side conversations, through interactions between our teams. That's what keeps us communicating well across the board.
So Erin, I want you to respond to that too, but Thomas, you've been on lots of different boards and are a good communicator and networker in your own right. I think the thing that I've struggled with organizationally at NAF is, as you know, we've got an academy assessment tool that is applied by local academies to assess their progress towards a high level of performance, to encourage them on their own initiative to continue to strive to get better. There's always been this tension since I've been at NAF between who has access to the scoring guide of an academy and will we share it to the employer side of the community. And I think of all the places that I've worked with, DC is probably as close as it comes to being more transparent between companies and educators around the performance of the academies. But I'd love you to explain how you pulled that off, because a lot of people are pretty terrified about an academy assessment going outside the walls of the educational system.
I think, you know, you touched on it earlier when you talked about the importance of relationships. I mean, we've all been at this work for quite some time, and I think it's deeply personal for us all. And I think everything that's happening around the country right now kind of reiterate the importance of coming together with people of goodwill to make a difference. And so I think that there is a genuine level of interest in doing the work at a high level. And more importantly, there's a level of trust. I think when you begin to share data outside of school system network, it requires trust. And so I think we worked together long enough where we built on that trust. I would just also say something in regards to a question you referenced earlier about recruiting people. It's extremely important that we take advantage of the winds of what's happening around us to galvanize support for folks to engage at a deeper level. And even right now, this is an opportunity to really get folks engaged at a high level in both from an internship perspective as well as just seeing NAF as a way forward to increasing the diversity that has been elusive oftentimes in business. And so supporting NAF as a means to getting more young people of color and more young women in positions of being able to transition into the workplace and hopefully excel in it. NAF affords you that kind of opportunity, and most businesses kind of have come to the realization that we haven't done enough and we have to do a whole lot more, and support for NAF helps make that possible.
Nice. So I want to pitch that to Erin for a minute for a commercial on DC Persists. So an example, right, of data, doing it right, demonstrating your ability to deliver, and the connection to post-secondary as a successful kind of extended pipeline. You want to take a few minutes to just let us know about how that came to be and how it connects this larger conversation?
You betcha. Thanks for that. And the team at NAF has been so supportive of DCPS Persist. So for folks on the on this call, on the Zoom meeting, DCPS Persists is something that we at DC Public Schools have been wanting to do pretty much since Emily and I started at DCPS. And to JD's point, needed to be able to prove what we could accomplish through doing things like NAF well. But we, through an extremely generous investment from the H. James and Alice B. Clark Family Foundation, we have become the first public school district in the country to establish an alumni support division. It is a very comprehensive, multifaceted body of work. Some of the areas that we are most excited and proud of are that approximately 750 DC public school graduates will get alumni coaches to provide individualized, personalized, differentiated supports through their first 2 years of college. And we're establishing partnerships with a select group of post-secondary institutions to try and sort of put the two pieces of the puzzle together that we as, the K through 12 district and they as the college have to try and understand better, where are our students as college, where are our graduates as college students succeeding, and how can we amplify that and, and sort of grow that and replicate it. And more importantly, where are they struggling, and how can we come together as the district and as the college and sort of put what we know together and address that. We, again, we know at DCPS, actually, let me zoom back because JD, I want to sort of jump back to something that you said earlier. At DCPS, we will say that every student is career bound, right? To your point of the of the siloing, every student is career bound. I've got 3 young kids. You've probably heard them multiple times. And what I want from them, the finish line for them isn't college. That's a pit stop that I hope they will take. But what I want for them and what I want for the 50,000 plus other DCPS students, in addition to them, is I want them to be able to get a job that's good, keep it, support themselves and their families if they choose to have one in the city in which they were educated. And so for many of them, that's going to require a college degree or certification because of the economy that we're in DC. where about 80% of all jobs now, and certainly even more good jobs, require some form of post-secondary degree or credential. But some of them don't. And so sort of erasing that stigma and really working also with the business partners to realize that this is not an either or, and that NAF academies are producing mostly students who are going to college. And if they're not, they are really ready to start, you know, as Thomas mentioned, they're ready to start in jobs. If I could just sort of pivot one more time and say super quick, sorry. When I engage business partners, there are 3 questions that almost all of them have. And I just wanted to share these with the audience, because as you sort of prep to be equipped to engage, if you don't have answers to these questions, you're going to be more likely to get a no. The first question is, how much do I need to do? Very early on, people are going to be very reluctant to commit to a lot. So we don't ask that, we don't come out the gate being like, host a bunch of interns. No, we start with, listen, come and be a guest speaker at our school, or a virtual guest speaker. You're in, you're out in an hour and 15 minutes. It's the best thing in your life, and we got you hooked. Because students like Terrell and Demaya are gonna hook you, and you're gonna wanna come back for more. And so have that menu ready, and don't start with a big ask. Let the students draw you in for more. The second is, can you help me? You know, adults are petrified to go and speak to a group of students.
So true.
So come and say, we've got a playbook, we've got a sample PowerPoint, we can walk you through. Do you want to do a pitch? Do you want to do a training? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? We will hold your hand every step of the way. So can you help me? The third thing, and this is hard, but it is like the absolute selling point for a lot of people who are not in it for, you know, reasons of the heart, which not everybody is do I need to pay? And that is especially the case in urban, vibrant economies, where if they've got to pay for someone, they're going to pay for that college intern or that grad school intern. And so the more you can sort of pull your community resources together and say, no, you don't. If you can answer, how much do I need to do? Not that much. Can you help me? Yes. Do I need to pay? Not a cent. You kind of painted them into a corner where they're going to say yes. And then students like Terrell and Demaya are going to do the rest of the work.
Yeah. So perfect segue to the next question, which is really around what's missing in your puzzle in terms of other community partners that could come together. And I know many are using a variety of strategies around the pay issue associated with who's the employer of record for activities associated with internships, et cetera. But there are also other things, especially in this COVID moment, where people are dealing with issues around food deserts, issues around healthcare, issues around I can't go to work and teach my kid at the same time, all the issues that COVID has brought to light, and how disconnected and uneven support systems are in communities. If you had a crystal ball and you had an opportunity to literally say, I would add these organizations to my playbook to make my map whole, what would they be? I want to start with Ron.
Oh boy. So, you know, COVID's put a magnifying glass on challenges that have always been there, right?
Yes.
And the real issue for employers, you know, clearly a NAF organization adds value in the process, right? But the problem is that there's a lot of Terrells and a lot of, I forget the young lady's name, that never get the opportunity that Terrell has, even though they're just as talented, right?
Right.
And so, you know, we start here with the assumption that that talent at birth is not distributed based on race or class, but it's clear that by the end of the pipeline, end of the education process, opportunity is. And so when I talked about in the beginning, enlightened employers, right? We need more that understand what has to happen in order for them to get the talent that they need. is for us to really build a better pipeline so that instead of suppressing talent and eliminating talent along the way, it actually produces more talent so that at the end of the pipeline, that opportunity outcome looks the same way it does when at birth, which is that it's distributed, not distributed based on race or class. Because most of America's talent is in these vast untapped pools of diversity. You know, it's not the top 10%, which keeps recycling. You know, it's 90% of the population that can't get a fair shot. And so, you know, I love Terrell. He's obviously a bright guy, but you know, we need to see more of him out there to solve America's talent problem. Sorry.
So no, I think that's perfect. I think that I want to bridge two things. One, Erin, your point about data, because I do think that, you know, if we've learned nothing also in COVID is that pay attention to the numbers, pay attention to science, pay attention to numbers in terms of how they should drive public policy, how they should drive what we're doing. And one of the things that comes to mind, and I would love Thomas's reaction to this from a business perspective and Antoinette from a school leader perspective, is I think it was JP Chase actually that did this. They did a huge assessment through their HR department to figure out, you know, what the barriers to hiring and what the workplace looked like. And what they concluded is that even though the industry said X amount needed college degrees to be hired at JP Chase, they concluded that in terms of actually the skills needed to do the job, that was artificially inflated, and in fact, it was something less than that. So part of the data review that I'm hoping the COVID moment can get us to drive to as we think about opportunities for every child is to get the employer community to figure out too in their HR standards and the education community around its standards, whether or not the scoped requirements, the degree requirements are in fact what are necessary for the work. Thomas, then Antoinette.
So I would just say, JD, in addition to COVID, I think George Floyd has created that kind of opportunity where folks are really reevaluating their processes. Because even as diverse as my organization is, as we took another look, we realized that there's still significant opportunities confronting some of my sister divisions. And so there are all of these barriers that prevent folks from getting the opportunity. And again, I think that when you look at what's happening throughout the country right now, there's a groundswell of folks kind of reevaluating their systems and processes really in response to the times. And so I think employers today are much more willing to go through that level of analysis. And again, as Erin said, to the extent that you have talented young people with good data to support the program, you know, this is a real deal opportunity to do something unlike we've been able to probably do in a decade, because the business side of the equation is much more open than they have been in my lifetime.
That's interesting. I'm going to take a different approach, I think, because I think we all know that employers require college degrees for jobs that don't really require that skill set, right? I don't know that that's going to change significantly, and particularly not in the near future. On the other hand, I do think, and Ron, you may disagree, but I do think that the college business model is about to, it has to readjust. I think it's a bubble in terms of the amount of money it costs to even go to college right now, and all bubbles burst. It would not surprise me if a lot of colleges aren't in a lot of trouble moving forward, in part because of COVID, but in part just because of the inflation of prices. I think that instead of like working with businesses to what they really need, we probably need to continue working to get more kids, not only into college, but through college and to degrees. I suspect that that can happen better in DC with a very, very strong local public institution. And so to answer the question about, you know, if I had a magic wand, I think that we would need much stronger pipelines into public institutions that are graduating students. Ron, I saw an article that you wrote recently where you indicated that your engineering school is like one of the best bargains in the country. But I don't know if you're in front of the academy students that are in engineering talking about the possibilities of being at home. I think your institution and other local institutions should or have to begin looking locally for students.
You know, as the
Love
most
that.
affordable university in the DMV, I agree with everything you just said.
Well, there's a great example of why this partnership works. I love it. Okay, so before we're getting close to the hour where we're going to open this up to the 97 people that have been watching this conversation to see what kind of questions come up. I want to throw out one more and ask Emily to respond to this as the person that at least I connected with early with NAF in terms of it being DC being a place that could actually take all the good stuff of NAF and take it out in a way that could fundamentally shift the systems of education in a way that could fully engage the employer community as a full partner. And the question I want to ask you, Emily, is if there was something, a special sauce, besides your history and all the contacts, the fact that you were able to leverage so much, is what is the magic in DC that has allowed you to suppress what tends to be the barrier in so many places around ego, ownership, brand, etc.? How did you do that?
Well, I got lucky with a mayor who was committed before he even ran to young people getting into the middle class. So I had a fertile partner there. And as Antoinette mentioned, I brought him our strategic plan that Erin and Antoinette and I nursed for a solid year with all the right people, and I brought it to him, and all he said to me was, did all these people really buy into this? And it was UDC, it was the Department of Employment Services. I mean, it was everybody who had a touch on this subject. All he said was, did everyone here buy into this? And I said, yes. He says, how much do you want? So I think bringing the right people together so there's nobody to stab you in the back, there's nobody crying in the background, this isn't right, this isn't fair. Like you just get everybody together, that cuts through a lot of stuff. And my colleagues will say it was a long and sometimes painful year of these meetings, but you know what? It was worth every minute of it because they stood by us and that got us across the finish line. I think on the business side of things, you know, I'm a big believer, maybe it's because I'm Catholic, I'm a big believer that guilt works miracles. And
the shame game.
Oh, absolutely, the shame game. And when you go to business leaders and you have, for example, Erin's distinct data on where these students are, you know, academically and professionally, and you have real data to say, no, these kids are graduating, these kids are going to college, these are the kind of kids we're taking, that want you to look at. That helps a lot too. And now, and this is a forward thinking, but again, this is guilting. JP Morgan Chase is doing great work with employers. And reading the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, you see all these corporations are like waking up and trying to be a little woke. Well, you know what? We'll help you be real woke. So they're looking for ways, they don't know what to do, and they're looking for ways to do, and my answer is, hey, we're here in DC. We have wonderful partnerships in this city. It's not like a little program here. I mean, this is a unified, from the mayor all the way down to the student in the classroom program. This is where you want to invest your time and your money. And this is going to help you bring these kids into the middle class, bring these kids into your corporate boardroom. What better way than to take them on as interns, part-time employees, apprentices, whatever. And I think that's how you have to hit it, is from the what do you call them, the street soldiers, which was, you know, me, Erin, Antoinette, who just really made everybody sit down together and do it. And then you have to go to the very top. In July, I met with 5 senior vice presidents of 5 major corporations in Washington. You know, we don't have home base, so they're often, but you know, it's the IBM world. And I nailed them on all these things. And by the time they were done, they were like, wow, we had no idea what was going on in DC. We had no idea that we thought that we heard about a few academies. I'm like, no, 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 no. And I had all the data, thanks to Erin sneaking me data on the side, to be able to put in front of them, not just about NAF kids, but about all the kids that are in Project Lead the Way, the kids that are in all the different programming that's knocking it out of the box. They were like, oh, we had no idea. And Erin, when you sent me the Barker report, I sent it to those 5 business people and I said, see, we're leading the nation in this kind of work and you want to play with us.
So one of the things to your point, and then I want before we switch it off to Bill to manage questions, I want our students to kind of have the last word, since we're doing all this stuff in hopes of making your pathway better and more students like you having opportunities in the future. But to Emily's point, I want to close one loop around data and how data gets shared and how we bring employers in is also imagery of the communities we live in. So many businesses that I talked about, when I talk about DC, they don't see you as a place that has businesses. It's really weird. It's like, because it's not the home of a major company, you know, it's like that's in Raleigh or that's in New York City or that's somewhere else. There's this imagery problem around whether or not there's a workforce in DC. And as we think about really scaling this work in DC to even more places, we got to pop that bubble because it's just not true, but it is a perception that's real right now. So our students, could you give a shout out? What do you think? Do you think any of this stuff makes any sense at all?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's not completely crazy.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm understanding.
Okay. Ms. Brown, what do you think?
Yes, I understand.
You understand? So, based on the experiences you've had as part of your high school academy, if there was one thing that either of you could do more of, less of, or change totally, what would it be?
We talking about like high school in general?
Yeah. Ha.
For me,
You are being recorded.
For me, I wish that, well, I don't see it very often, but there's some teachers that don't have the same passion that they used to have when teaching. And it kind of like affects me when I'm trying to learn because their negative like energy, it kind of just shows. And I know it happens. I know like teachers care about us and stuff, but sometimes they just don't seem happy with what they're doing. And it kind of shows.
Fair. It's fair. And I think that it's a big call out, really good point as we think about this COVID moment too, because there are a whole lot of teachers, to be perfectly honest, that didn't sign up for this kind of distance learning kind of conversation. And I think that could come through emotionally as not feeling inspired the way they maybe did before. So really good call out. Terrell, any other comment?
I say be more active like around school, as in like organizations. And my 9th grade year, I could have worked a little bit harder. Yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Okay. Bill, you want to take us to our Q&As?
Absolutely. And I know, so I'm going to invite all of the attendees on the webinar to take advantage of either the chat function or the Q&A function of Zoom. You can place it in either place, but we've got staff monitoring both. And so please fire away your questions. And but I know we've got one right out of the gate, JD, which is one that's centered around economic trends. You know, what do the panelists see in terms of, you know, the next 5 years? Certainly, I know it's hard because of COVID, not necessarily a crystal ball, but in terms of, you know, what they're seeing right now, economic trends and how that might affect public-private partnerships.
I can speak to the question as it relates to my industry, the hospitality industry. We anticipate hotels are going to continue to struggle through Q1 of next year with minimal occupancies. We're hopeful that we'll begin to see some lift towards the second half of next year with the hopes of a vaccine coming into place somewhere around the first half of 2021. And then we do not expect to see pre-COVID level revenues until 2023. And so I think most in business initially were hopeful that the recovery would be a V-shaped recovery. However, everything that we see suggests that it's going to be more of a U-shape and it's going to take a longer period of time to come back. And so 2023 is the date or the year that most companies are seeing as kind of getting back to some level of stabilization. And just to how it's going to impact the internships, I would say that clearly companies are going to be resource stretched. However, again, going back to the George Floyd case, I think it's causing for folks to reevaluate how they deploy their resources. And so while there's going to be some things cut, there may be an expansion of resources in the area of internships and support of programs that afford a high level of programmatic experience for young people of color.
Awesome. There's a question that's come in that I think several of you can respond to. I can do a round robin, but they're really a focus on interest in the virtual internships. So I think people got a little excited about that conversation and I think the question is trying to get a visual understanding of what does it look like? How successful do you think they've been in this question is coming from Milwaukee, and that they have businesses interested in doing it, but they need some help, I think, framing what it would look like.
Well, I'm happy to begin the answer to that question with the virtual internships. It is a terrific question because when they first came up for me, I was like, what in the world could it be? How does that work, right? Well, yeah. They start off with introductions and getting to know people. Some of these internships are one-on-one. Others of them are one person from business and industry with a group of students. And that group of students can be students from the same school, students from different schools, or even, as Terrell indicated, students from different states. Often virtual internships are project-based. So students are tasked with creating an app that would support their community in some way, or some other description of building an app. Sometimes it's around business, it's around media, and students are asked to create a media campaign, public announcements, or something of that nature. With the internships at George Washington University this summer, a lot of the virtual internships gave students the opportunity to meet individuals in different areas of the university doing different things, so that, as Thomas indicated, that exposure to professionals who look like them doing work that maybe they've never envisioned before. So everything from career exploration through the creation of apps to media campaigns are the types of projects that students have been engaging in our virtual internships.
Awesome. Erin, you want to add anything to that?
I think what I would say something that Tom, I remember very, very clearly having a conversation with Tom in March. It was the last week of school before we sort of all went home for much longer than I think any of us expected. And he relayed something that I thought was just really important, and I would really encourage folks to keep in mind. I think Antoinette did a great job talking about the technical parts of the virtual internship, but really having a good relationship with your business partners. And you know, he was really able to share with me some I think, incredibly insightful things, such as, you know, he has to, and his, you know, peers need to keep in mind what, you know, a front desk manager, or what an events manager, or, you know, what a concierge or anyone, you know, in a hotel would feel after having their job cut or reduced, seeing a high school student in doing work. And what sort of does that do to the full-time employee sort of mindset and mentality and feelings towards the employer? And he was able to paint such a clear picture for me about what would be possible and how we should strategize around it. But for me, that moment I thought was really pivotal, because we had the strong relationship with Thomas and other, you know, industry partners who were able to say, here are the things that we are experiencing on the ground. We are still absolutely willing to do this, but we can't have our employees feeling some sort of way about your students, you know, and us. And so how do we sort of do this in a way that we can pull it off? I think that was really critical.
So Erin,
yeah.
Erin, to that point, there's an opportunity, I think, from a public policy perspective, I guess, for DC and other places to really think about how to build incentive strategies between the fear of layoff, fear of replacement, and reach to new trainees, new talent coming in. So I do think that it's a real fear that people have if they're currently employed, especially in a COVID moment, that they're going to go out and work with all these high schools and they're going to replace me, right? Rather than seeing it as adding new talent and new innovations to the workplace. So thinking about ways of incenting that you get more by doing both than by thinking of it as a replacement strategy could be a really interesting financial incentive structure that could exist between the school systems, post-secondary, and the business community in a way that lifts instead of challenges or replaces. So I want to ask our two students, since the question was around virtual internships, what do you think you got out of it?
I'd like to go first. Well, I really gained like confidence, because coming in, it was intimidating because it was like business professionals, like high class jobs and careers. And every day we had like panel discussions and people would come in to talk about their jobs. And they was pretty much open, like as mentors. Like I asked for their email and they would like respond back and stuff like that. Like they was open to communicate with me and just teach me a lot of stuff. It gave me a confidence boost. And so yeah, I built a lot of connections by networking with, you know, the professionals.
I agree with Terrell, and yeah, we met a lot of people, like a lot of physicians. So I had the opportunity to like improve speaking skills because I had to introduce myself a lot and have a lot of different conversations. And I got to work with different people from different schools, so that was nice for me. And overall, I got to learn from the Arches mentors of Georgetown, which are like students in the medical school. So that was also a good opportunity for me to learn.
Did it change either of your goals? Did the experience change what you were shooting for?
I wouldn't say. Go ahead.
You could go ahead.
I would say my mindset didn't change, but instead it pushed me even more, because a lot of the speakers, they was in the field or in the career that I wanted to be in.
Good.
I agree. It made me try to be more, well, it motivated me more, to be honest, to be in the healthcare, to have a healthcare career, because we were talking about health disparities, and it kind of like inspired me for when I become a physician, to speak on those type of things and try to change them.
Awesome. Bill, more questions coming in?
We have a ton. I'm not sure if we can get to all of these right now, but we're going to give it the best shot here. One question among many, as I said, that came through was kind of directed towards Dr. Mason. How can we amplify and incentivize younger students, particularly young students of color, seeing themselves in STEM careers as early as 9th grade or even younger? Because we talked a lot about in our conversation the talent pipeline, but from your perspective in the post-secondary, how do we help reach further back to attract them into great programs like you have at your institution?
Yeah, we're actually doing that, so it's an easy question for me to answer.
Great.
As Erin knows, we have a partnership out at Anacostia High School, and it's called the C16 Equity Academy, and it's actually a STEM-focused academy. Their CTE is engineering, civil engineering. Now, we know that the school there, Anacostia, is not going to produce mass amounts of civil engineers right away, but because we have seamless pipelines, we can start with the workforce component of that CTE and work our way up to more and more engineers over time. The key factors are, one, I think, being able to identify talent in ways beyond just standardized tests. And so we're working on something called a 360 assessment. We also are putting together a math teacher training institute, working with KIPP and Wilson, which is a NAF school, and with Anacostia, which is a NAF school, to design a process to focus on students that are at the lower end, the bottom half of the income quartile, because it's a different learning and teaching process for them. And so we're trying to develop a way to take it to them in a way that they can understand both content-wise as well as pedagogy. And then it's about exposure. You heard about these internships. I mean, one of the things I've learned is that you can do just as much virtually as almost as you can do face-to-face. And you kind of end up doing more because there's not as many coffee breaks and water conversations, right?
Right.
And so, I talked about the pipeline, and the more we can connect the dots on the pipeline and start to identify and encourage talent earlier on in the process, over time, the more and more we'll be able to supply to industries. But at the end of the day, the employers are the end of the pipeline. And so the more we can get to buy into the fact that we have to rethink how we do it, identify talent in different ways, and start to sort of shake up the equation so that there are more opportunities open earlier in the process and down the line, I think the more chances we'll have to be successful.
That's great.
Can I just add one quick thing to that? I would actually push I would actually push that 9th grade is too late, especially for students of color and especially for girls of color. They are making assumptions about themselves that are full stop wrong about what they can and can't do. And so, we as a district and others as a district, I hope you are pushing yourselves to think about the middle school piece. For us, Perkins, the Perkins grant, which funds a lot of our work as well, has really just become available to spend in the middle grades in a more sort of, in a greater way. And we're really excited about that. The other thing-
Erin, before you leave that idea, which I agree with, I think as a systems thinker, which you are, and Antoinette as well, you know that the feeding structure between middle and high does not naturally develop a pipeline. And so as we think about just resources being available or someone having an appetite to push down some of these issues into the middle grades, we have to deal with the systemic issue of what the pipeline actually looks like in terms of where young people matriculate, because I've seen too many great middle school programs mislead students who step then into a high school and go, what happened?
Right.
I experienced this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they end up getting disincented, not incented to go further.
So I'll just talk quickly about two things that we're doing to try and get there. And just for other districts who are on the call, some districts in the country have a really beautiful, clean feeder pattern from, you know, elementary.
Very few, very, very few.
You know, but like ours is like the messiest spider web, right? Just imagine, like, put that picture in your mind. And so there are two things that we're doing. I'm happy to share more resources in the chat. Thing one is, thanks to the generosity of NAF and Fund 2, we have developed guides that are personalized to every 8th grader in DCPS, such that in the fall, before they need to make their decisions about what high schools they're going to go to, they will get their personalized guide in the mail and in their student information system that will capture what NAF Academy options are available to them. Then the NAF Academy leaders are going to follow up to that with, you know, hey, Antoinette, you know, who goes to Brookland Middle School. I'm the NAF Academy director at Dunbar's Engineering Academy. Were you interested in what you saw in your guide? Do you want to, you know, do a virtual tour and check it out? Can we pair you with a student? If done well, the NAF Academies can be the biggest hook for high school enrollment. The second thing that we do is there's a really excellent organization called College and Career Clubs that's being run out of NCEP now. Don't ask me what NCEP stands for. For districts who are interested in doing good college and career exposure at the middle school level, I would really encourage you to look at that model. It's super affordable and it is peer-to-peer led, which means that students are building their agency and ability to lead one another in instruction, and they will walk through what different exposure looks like. We've embedded NAF into that. So as they're learning about IT and the robust IT industry, as well as post-secondary institutions like UDC that offer IT programming, they can also learn about that high school piece and visit their local IT academy. So I think that really, the more you get a 9th grader showing up as close to a true positive as possible, the better you are, because otherwise you see so many students getting popped into an academy and they're like, I didn't want to do this, or I thought I did, but had I known like the littlest bit about what being in a health science academy means, like I never would have done that. And so you want as many true positives as possible in the beginning to try and get that to work. And you want to see as many students seeing this as a possibility for themselves, in which, yes, I as a young Black girl can absolutely see myself as an engineer, because that groundwork has been sort of, you know, the seed has been planted in the early years that are very transformational.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add, I think it's absolutely right that starting in the 9th grade is probably not the best approach. Our data would indicate that many of the students who drop out, there's something about that 8th to 9th grade transition that really starts the process. So getting to students earlier is better, because if you wait too late, the students might not be around anymore. The CTE state plan, which we recently wrote, definitely includes a middle school push to do career awareness at the middle school, so that kids can begin looking at high schools and having more of an idea of where they may want to go. I think that's very important. I also think it's important that we share what offerings are in the high schools, not only with the students, but with families and communities as well. We are looking to figure out ways to share that information either before EdFest, which is the big opportunity for students to learn about schools in the district. So we're looking for innovative ways to share information about high schools so that people can make good choices.
So it seems to me, Antoinette, I recall, God, it's been a couple of years when we went out to lunch and had this conversation. It seems to me like this is the moment, the topic for thinking about community engagement in the design of pipeline development. So many, versus seeing it only inside the structure called school, instead look at it like the structure of Boys and Girls Clubs, the structures of other support systems in the community that children of that age are beginning to screen and sort. So it seems to me that this challenge is one that could bring in a whole set of community partners that we don't often see in the pipeline discussion.
JD, can I add something?
Please.
That's why what we're developing in Ward 8 is a C16 Academy, because you really have to start with the community and create and strengthen the ecosystem around the child, because it goes back at least that far in terms of the, when the talent starts to get suppressed. And if you want to take it to its logical conclusion, it actually even goes back further than that. I mean, usually it's the child's grandmother where the process has started. And so, and so we're starting in the high school only because that's where we're starting. But our goal is to build out this pipeline all the way through, from the community all the way up through to a bachelor's degree. And if Erin will tell the Clark Foundation to give us some money to help with it.
That's the Erin Bank. Okay, Bill, what else we got?
Well, believe it or not, we're keeping an eye on the clock and want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I know, JD, we wanted to give our panelists the opportunity to give any kind of quick closing thoughts.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Time
Emily,
does
start.
fly.
Well, I think I have two comments that I think everybody will agree with. Number one, to make all this work, it has to be a serious coalition. I mean, a serious coalition. People are in for not just this year, they're in for 10 years. They're in for the long haul, because otherwise you can't build enough and fast enough if you're constantly trying to pull people in. And the other is looking to the future. I'm an optimist by nature, and I think as terrible as COVID is, and what it's doing to education, and I can't imagine what people are trying to go through to keep schools and students going. But I think it also gives us some opportunities to see how to take the things we're talking about here, work-based learning, internship, and expand them exponentially using resources that now we're all kind of learning to be comfortable. I'm happy to hear these students talk about their experiences being so, nationally, nationwide, and how it built confidence to be talking to people around the country, and people giving you their emails so you could email them anytime and ask them. I mean, it's opening doors in a different way that maybe even our old internships didn't quite do. So I think we have to keep our eyes open for a lot of great opportunity that I think is coming our way.
Antoinette?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize it. So
It's your closing moment, girl.
thank you very much. One, it's been a great opportunity to sit with everybody on the call. So I thank NAF for this opportunity to see some old friends and to welcome UDC into the mix in a way. So it's fantastic. I would pick up on what Emily said in terms of being optimistic and being able to take advantage of an opportunity. I think that technology has not affected education in the same way that it has positively affected other fields. This COVID has presented the opportunity to many educators to better understand and use technology in ways that can really move forward the idea of individualized learning. And it makes teachers much more comfortable with various platforms. So I am incredibly optimistic about the way that education can be shaped moving forward. Of course, the digital divide is real, and we have to continue to work towards helping all students have access to devices and the internet. But I think that this may give us the opportunity to use technology and to allow technology to transform education in really positive ways. As far as CTE is concerned, this continuing growth and development around the idea that what we are doing is preparing students for careers, and the more that we can expose students to people who look like them, who are doing incredible things, the more that we can strengthen their confidence through internships, the better off students are. And I look forward to continuing to support that forward movement in any way possible.
Thanks. Erin. You're on mute.
I know, it's like when you need to unmute yourself, my like little finger can't move fast enough. I would say overall for districts, like what gets measured gets done. You know, you have to be really clear about what you are looking at and looking for and what success looks like. You have to think about that from both the district, from, you know, city, state leadership, from the business community, from the post-secondary community, and just relentlessly track that. That's how we were able to get traction, and that's how we've been able to expand in the way that we have. I think also just from a from an equity, I see NAF academies as a real potential driver for equity. Back when, you know, I remember 6 or 7 years ago talking to, you know, a very prestigious group of older white people about CTE and asking them, okay, like raise your hand if you have kids. And most of them raised their hand, and I said, well, you know, raise your hand if any of your kids either did or will go into a CTE or a career academy. And they all went down. And that's garbage. And that's not okay. And what I feel we have done, if you do this well, is I got Anna and Natalie and Charlie Bebo. They're white, you know, got a PhD. My husband's got a master's degree. Like, we're pretty doing okay. I would be delighted to have them go to a NAF Academy at DCPS. These are not programs for other children, and that really has to be front and center for everyone also to make it work.
Thomas.
So I am optimistic by the energy and passion of young people like Terrell and Demaya and what they're doing in our academies, but I'm also optimistic about what they're doing in terms of demanding urgent change throughout our country. And I think that unlike some prior generations, there's an unwillingness to compromise, and they're demanding that we make it right, and we make it right now. And so it's that level of urgency in terms of the way that they're putting forth some significant demands has me optimistic that business will move, and we'll either be inspired to move or they will move us. And it's time for all of that to happen. And so I just want to say to Terrell and Demaya, I'm incredibly proud of both of you. And I think we all are still around the computer trying to find more ways to do for you. And I think we realize we owe you absolutely everything. And we're going to do our part to make certain that you have the best of opportunities. So again, I just want to thank you for being present.
Nice. Ron?
Yeah, first, let me thank you all for the opportunity to participate in this. It's been a lot of fun. Second, let me say that I think I've done work at some level with everyone on this panel, and they're all good people doing good work. And you see that a lot in the district. I think there's a sincere desire to make things better. But you know, I'm old enough now to say that I've been through a few cycles of reform, of protest, and you sort of start to see a theme. And the truth is that, you know, even though we have a lot of good people doing good work, you know, the needle hasn't moved much. I mean, the issues that COVID has put the magnifying glass on were the same issues that were there 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I'm hoping that what Penny is saying is true, that this generation will be the starting point for real change. But the problem is that, you know, there's a design problem in America. You know, it's a flaw in the design that suppresses more talent than it produces and recycles talent at the top and clogs up the pipeline for everybody else trying to get there. And until we change that design, which is really what our C16 Equity Academy is trying to think through, we're always going to have challenges with equity and undoing racism and social justice, because those are a direct contradiction to the outcomes that the design is designed to produce, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
No, it makes complete sense. I mean,
And so we have to take it on frontally, I think. And if we don't take it on frontally, you know, I probably won't be around for the next cycle, but you never know.
Oh, I think you will. I hope you will. But I would agree that the system actually produces exactly what it's built to produce right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this conversation today is really around going after system change, and NAF as a design and other designs together have to address the full pipeline. It cannot be just continuation of the piecemeal approach, or I think we fail again. Terrell, Maya, any last words of advice to those of us who are getting old? Long of tooth, very old, older than dirt. And so I need to hear from you. What do you think? Final words.
I would just like to say thank you. Thank you for having me. Just listening to my experience, and hopefully it helps. You guys keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an outstanding job. So
well, I think all of us are optimistic because of you guys, so that's great.
Yes, indeed.
Brown, what do you think?
Thank you for having me. And yeah, I agree with Terrell. And also, just I appreciate you guys even having this conversation because it's important.
Wow.
Bill, you want to close us out?
That's that. I just want to say, I know we're just slightly over time, but that is well worth the investment. So I can, on behalf of everyone at NAF Nation, I want to really extend my heartfelt thank yous to all of our distinguished panelists. You guys were amazing, as we knew you would be, but really appreciate you giving up your time. And we hope that you'll join us for the next leadership series. Pay attention to your emails. They'll be coming through in another month or two. So again, thanks to all of you, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.